lesson is going to be very straightforward. We'll use techniques that we've learned from this lesson, as well as the theory of colors and the theory of how materials work together from this lesson, and apply it to our work. We'll use exactly the same techniques that I've discussed in the demo and try to create something of our own. So that's pretty much the assignment for whether you are a beginner or advanced. Now there's some small differences between those two levels. So if you're painting in color for the first time, or you don't have too much experience in painting with colors and you just want to have a good practice, use exactly the same techniques that we've discussed. Maybe change the composition, start with something that is more your own and something more interesting. Use any of the architectural styles that we've discussed so far, whether it's Neolithic or Roman, Asian Roman, Greek, Byzantine, any of those styles up to Renaissance, or actually up to Rococo, and create one concept illustration. So sketch out your perspective lines, make like a quick sketch, dirty black and white sketch based on the perspective, so you know what the construction of your concept is going to be, and then find a hero reference and work with that hero reference to apply similar color scheme and similar lighting to your concept and create something interesting. What it's going to be, it's up to you, but the idea is it has to be something that is related to the architecture and it has a clear construction in it. So it's going to be more of an architectural rather than a landscape piece in that situation. Now, if you already have an experience and you've been working in colors so far quite a lot, or you've been creating concepts already, create 1 up to 3 concepts using the same techniques as from this lesson. Try to put as much effort in details as possible, but mask it in a way that you can barely tell whether it's a photography or not, using exactly similar ways that we've discussed in the demo in this lesson. But what I want you to do is I want you to take a architectural style that we've discussed so far and make it your own. So construct something that is different from that architectural style, but is taking cues from that architectural style. So the demo itself is actually what the assignment for more advanced and more seasoned artists it would be. If you haven't done any of that kind of work before, you don't have to create something that is on your own. You can basically take any of the monuments that are out there and try to replicate it, maybe change the angle of view, deconstruct it in a way that you would deconstruct everything else, the way we've learned it in lesson 1, and then do a quick sketch, and then apply colors and apply your shadows and everything that we've talked about into the image. So it's pretty straightforward. I would say it should not take you more than 3 hours to finish one of the concepts. Try to limit yourself with time. If you want to spend extra time, obviously that's fine. You can go as long as you want, but be aware that you don't want to spend too many hours and do too much of a polished image, because that's not the concept behind this. This is supposed to be a quick concept rather than finished illustration that is keeping everything superbly photoreal. All right, so finally, takeaways for lesson 4. A few things that we've mentioned already inside the lesson during the demo is the tools and attention to details and integrity of the image. So let's discuss tools and how you should approach tools and what's the perception. And I'll maybe start with like a little anecdote that used to be a saying during the times when I was learning to paint and I was working in the industry back in 2004, between 2004 and 2010. There was this notion in the concept art community that using photography is a wrong thing to do because it's so-called cheating. Obviously that notion kind of faded away. It still stays in some of the corners of the art community, but that's something you should completely ignore, in my opinion. You have to understand that when you work in production, when you work for the team, what's the most important part is your efforts and your productivity that will help the team to achieve the goal, which is creating the final product, which is creating possibly the best game ever, right? And in order to do that, you need to use tools that will help and make your work not only easier for you, but will help everyone else to understand what exactly you want to do with your work. So whether you're just painting or using photography or using any other techniques that will help you to create a final concept, it really doesn't matter. What matters is your intentions for the concept and the clarity of the concept. So if you're using photography to get the details that otherwise you would have to spend hours and hours on to create, let's say the canopy of the trees, you can help yourself with using photography. Help yourself by color picking the right colors instead of trying to figure them out when you're on the clock and you really have to have that stuff finished by the end of the day. Use color picking from the photography. Make your life easier. Start with the hero image that already has a proper color scheme and maybe change it the way that you feel it will work better with the final concept. Everyone is working with some kind of reference. There's always a point of reference, whether it's a color scheme, the lighting scenario, or parts of the design that are supposed to be used. If you're creating a vehicle, you will look at other cars because you need to understand how vehicles work. If you create a vehicle for film, for instance, you will actually get a proper vehicle to start with and then modify it, because it's much easier to modify something that already exists and you can buy rather than build the whole car from scratch. And that's how you have to think about production art as well. Find a medium that already works. Find a point, a foundation from which you can start and go from there. One of that foundations is what you learn, the foundation of art, how you use perspective, how you use values, how you use hues and saturations. That's the foundation that will take time and you need to learn in order to be really good at, illustrating. The other foundation is in the production realm, is something that already exists and you can work on top in order to create something different, create a derivative concept, derivative work that'll serve the purpose of not only inspiring your team, not only creating a clarity of your image, but also of allowing everyone else to work faster, basically. Last thing you want to have is having environment artist or level designer to come over to your desk constantly to ask what exactly you meant in this concept. I don't understand what's there. What is exactly this? I don't understand how it's constructed. If you don't work in a way that there's a clarity, that's the questions you're going to have, and those questions will waste time that is precious in production environment. So that leads towards another aspect, which is attention to detail and image integrity, and how it helps your clarity and intentions. So when you work with photos and work with paint, you want to make sure that you balance those two in a way that you're not overlooking anything in your image. If you have a very nicely rendered part of the image, but it's not the focal point of the image itself will have wrong intentions and might be read in a different way that you intended to. If your focus is, for instance, with the demo image that we did for the class, the entrance itself, you want to make sure that the entrance has enough contrast, enough details, and it's composed in a way that your eye is going towards that direction. You're not only constructing the concept of how this location looks, but also you're allowing the viewer, whether it's art director, level designer, or anyone else who's supposed to work on the assets for that thing, you're allowing them to understand, okay, this is the most important part of the image. I have to put all the emphasis on where the entrance is. Majority of the detail from the model, when I'll be modeling it, will be on the door. the textures, when we create textures, the dirt, all those nice decals and everything will happen around the door, so that the player that plays the game will look at the door right away instead of looking at the walls around the door, being distracted by details that are not necessarily in the right place. Your image is a foundation for everyone else, much like Art Foundation is necessary for you. So remember that. Remember to pay attention to the integrity. If you're using textures and using paint, make sure that it's nicely done all across the image. Whether you have to remove detail from the texture or find a texture to use for the most important part of the image, it's all about that balance. It's all about that attention to details, not leaving areas where you're making something really sketchy. It's fine for the idea itself, for initial conversation, but might be misleading if you use it outside of the artistic sort of realm, if you're not talking with other artists or art directors. Remember that not everyone will have a great eye for art. Level designers will have better eye for gameplay, will have better eye for layouts, you will have better eye for color, and all those things. So everyone has their specialty, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and you have to think that way and avoid misunderstanding and disorientation by putting the right clarity and intention to your concepts. So that will be the two takeaways from these lessons that I believe are one of the most important ones when you work in illustration and concept art.